وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
Thank you, Brother Asadi, for the beautiful recitation. Inshallah, now I would like to invite Sheikh Jafar to give us a lecture for the birth of Imam al-Jawad. Loud salawat for Sheikh Jafar.
Give for the hastened reappearance of Imam Zaman and even louder salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And for the well-being of our community and the ummah, and even louder salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أبلغكم رسالات ربي وأنصح لكم وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. صدق الله علي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد العظيم. صدق الله علي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Jamia Mu'mineen and Mu'minat. First and foremost, I congratulate the Imam of our time, Imam Zaman, Ajil Farajul Sharif, and then all of you on the auspicious occasion which we have come to celebrate, and that is the birthday of Imam Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad alayhi salatu wassalam. As you know, Imam Jawad alayhi salam is one of the Imams who, like Imam Hadi, and of course he was one of the first Imams to become Imam at a very young age. Imam Hadi, after him, was also very young when he became the Imam. Imam Jawad alayhi salam also, he lived in a time or an era which, as we mentioned before when we spoke about the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam, it was a time period where the Abbasids were actually trying to shift the, you can say, the center of knowledge. Not just simply away from Medina, and this is where the Ahlul Bayt, where Imam Baqir alayhi salam and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, they established their institute of learning. But Ma'mun, being actually one of the most learned of the Khulafa, when we read the history of Islam. And this is something that, again, a lot of the historians say that among all of the Khulafa, Ma'mun was actually perhaps one of the most well-educated. So he didn't really establish the Bayt al-Hikmah, the house of wisdom. It was established by his father, Harun al-Abbasi, but Ma'mun took it to kind of its peak. And one of the things that Ma'mun did in order to take this Bayt al-Hikmah to its peak, he invited Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi hafizatullah to be a part of that discussion. He knew that if Imam Rida alayhi hafizatullah, if he came, that whatever discussion of knowledge was there, that again, the Imam would come, the Imam would participate. In fact, that was also the reason which Ma'asuma salamun alayha, the sister of Imam Rida, that she was making her way to Khurasan before she passed away. After Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi hafizatullah, it was Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah who also kind of entered into that atmosphere, into that discussion, those debates at a very young age, at the age of 7. Salawat. It's too loud. Yeah. So he entered into that discussion, and we see that Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah at the age of 7, he was discussing with individuals who were at the age of his grandfather. That's really their age. If you look at it, so they could be his grandfather. But his knowledge was greater than their knowledge. In fact, in one of the questions that was asked to Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah, they say that at least when the ulama, when they examined the answer of Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah, for one question, which I guess supposedly the person who's asking wanted to just simply test the knowledge of the Imam, but when he got the answer from Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah, that he didn't realize that how complex or how many aspects and dimensions that question had. That what if someone who was in Mecca, whether they had, and there's a sacred place in Mecca, that the haram, that what is considered to be the area of the haram, if they had made a dhabihah, they killed an animal. So then Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah, he opened this up. He says, okay, well, where is that person? Were they in that area of the haram, or were they just outside of it? Were they muhrim or not muhrim? Were they on hajj or not on hajj? Were they on umrah, not on umrah? So Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah, based on what many of the ulama they have analyzed, they said that from that one question, he posed 300 scenarios. And some say that, in fact, because the scenarios, actually also in some of them they overlap, they said even if you multiply it, it was over 900 scenarios that he posed. So this was the knowledge of Imam Jawad alayhi hafizatullah. And this is something that, this idea and this concept of knowledge, it is something very important within our deen, within our school of thought as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in multiple occasions in the Quran, He alludes to this idea and the importance of knowledge. In fact, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He placed Adam in this earth, what distinguished Adam, which is again the father of humanity, what distinguished him from his other creation? It was knowledge. وَعَلَّمَ الْآدَمِ أَسْمَاءَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam. So it is the ilm that separated Adam, it separated humanity from the other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, each of the anbiya, each of the prophets, especially the ulul azm, especially those prophets who were delivered a risala, a book, a sharia, that this is also one of the things that distinguished them from the other anbiya or even messengers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in verse 62 of Surah Al-A'raf, when He speaks about Nuh, the prophet and Nabi Nuh, that He alludes to this. That one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is kind of narrating to us, that what was one of the missions of Nabi Nuh. And Nabi Nuh, he said, أُبَلِّغُكُمْ رَسَالَاتِ رَبِّي, that I am delivering to you the messages of my Lord, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And according to Allama Tabatabai, he says that the way that this is phrased, that أُبَلِّغُكُمْ رِسَالَات, not, which is plural, not أُبَلِّغُكُمْ رِسَالَة, that I have a message to you. That no, أُبَلِّغُكُمْ رِسَالَات رَبِّي, meaning that the message or that knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is delivering to humanity through His Anbiya is a vast set of knowledge. It is great knowledge. It is abundant. It is deep. It's not something that's shallow. It's something that needs time to understand, and it needs, mashallah, commemorate those who come, who participate in the programs, especially what seems like a small program, but it's not a small program. It is a huge program. That when individuals take time out of their day, out of their week, to come to read the Quran, to learn how to read the Quran, the discussions on Friday night, mashallah, that the importance of this, and this is one of the things I want to point out from the words of Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that what was that mission of Nabi Nuh? What was that mission? You can apply to all of the Anbiya. But particularly I would say to the Anbiya, Ulul Azm, because Nuh, he was Ulul Azm. أُبَلِّغُكُمْ رِسَالَاتِ رَبِّي, that to give and to deliver deep knowledge and beneficial knowledge. So He delivers it. وَأَنْصَحُ لَكُمْ. And what does Nuh do? He sincerely advises his ummah. He sincerely advises him. And that advice, and again, just using that manhaj, that maslak, that methodology that many of our mufassireens, especially Allama Tabatabai, when he says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks or when He delivers the Quran, even the Ahlul Bayt alayhim, every word is calculated. And these words are related to one another. So that nasiha wa ansaha lakum. And He delivers the best advice, or the most sincere advice. Or according to some, that this ansah means niyyat al-khalisa, that either He's delivering the message or messages of His Lord with utmost sincerity, meaning that this is one of the criterions in order to deliver and carry that knowledge. Or if it's وَأَنْصَحَ لَكُمْ, that He's giving the most sincere advice, that advice with regards to what? To ilm, to knowledge. That how do you contain that knowledge? Again, because truly knowledge and gaining that knowledge is a blessing, is a barakah. Not something that everyone has the tawfiq to have, to carry, to bear. Not everyone has the tawfiq, mashallah, that if you think that the shahadatain, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Two words of testimony that inshallah we understand them. And perhaps I would say that if you're present here, if you are praying your salat and you're making your fast, yes, you understand it. But that understanding also may not be complete, and I'm absolutely sure it's not complete. You understand it. But the more that you study, the more that you begin to really look at what is that risala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delivered. What is that message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delivered to humanity? What are those actions of Rasulullah? Then you begin to understand deeper and deeper, not only the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that knowledge which the Prophet he delivered. So even these two things, not everyone has tawfiq to even make those statements, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. To actually understand that who is Allah? Who is our Creator? Not everyone has the tawfiq, the success, to even understand that, well, who is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Not everyone has tawfiq to understand that who is the Ahlul Bayt of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Again, there are capacity, or at least their ability or their ability to understand has not been granted success. So this idea and concept, or at least this relationship that humanity has with knowledge, and particularly those who follow the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who follow the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and particularly in our case who follow the Khatam al-Anbiya and the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, we find that there is great advice that is given about knowledge. Why? Because, as I said, that knowledge is vast. And the Prophet Noah, he delivered it. He delivered it with sincerity, or he gave the most sincere advice with regards to that knowledge. But also, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? What did he tell his ummah? He says, وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He says, and there's a knowledge that I have that you don't have. In other words, you don't have the capacity to hold that knowledge. So there is a hierarchy of knowledge. And there's a knowledge that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he has, that others didn't have the capacity, that no human has the capacity. There's a knowledge that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, they have, that no one else has that capacity. And mashallah, if we read the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, this is also one of those, you can say, blessings, those ni'mah that they mention about this ummah. But there's a knowledge that this ummah has that no one else has. That no one has been given that tawfiq to have that knowledge. And so this is why we find in the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam different advice on how we should interact with knowledge. Whether that knowledge is coming to us through the Quran, through the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that knowledge is coming to us through the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. And one of those beautiful advice from Imam Jawad alayhi afdalus salatu wassalam, he says, "Alaykum bi talab al-ilm, fa inna talabahu farida, wal bahtha anhu nafila." Subhanallah. He starts off with something that sounds familiar to us, and of course, we know that because all of the Ma'sumeen alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, they've given somewhat of a similar advice. He says, "Alaykum bi talab al-ilm, fa inna talabahu farida." That you must go and seek knowledge. In other words, you must go read the Quran, read the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, read about what your obligation is, your duty is, your responsibility is before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning, you read, if you're not a mujtahid or marja, you read from your marja, what is my responsibility in this area? As Imam Jawad, he says, why? Because it is incumbent, it is obligatory upon you. Just as the Prophet, he says, what? "Utlubul ilm min al-mahd ila al-lahd," that seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. In other words, your entire lifetime. Meaning that there shouldn't be a moment in your life where, you feel that, I don't need to learn anything else. No, your entire lifespan, you should be learning. One of the ulama in Mashhad, when he spoke about this idea and the concept of knowledge, and just how it relates to our life. And he's speaking to his students, but he's kind of giving them a little bit of a joke or this or that. He says, look, what are we doing with our life? Truly, if we're not learning from the cradle and grave, learning something, doesn't mean that you have to sit down and, mashallah, those who have the tawfiq to learn the hawza or to maybe study the Quran with a teacher, study the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt. Doesn't mean that. But every day or every week, learn something, one thing. And this is why also Imam Ali alayhi salatu, he says, not important to finish the Quran, but what is important? To read the ayah, to contemplate an ayah, to learn something from the Quran. Learn something from the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu. Learn from something from your duty and responsibility. So he's telling his students, he says, really, what are we doing with our life? If we truly look at our life, he says, what do we do with those the average amounts of years? They say, well, on average, a person lives for 75 years. And he's like, so he starts saying that, he says, yes, and all the 75 years, if we can, or learn something. They don't think that, oh, well, there's an infant in the baby in the womb of the mother, can't learn anything. No. In fact, if that mother is learning, if that mother is playing the Quran, if that mother is listening to dua while that child is in their womb, then that child is learning, understanding something. So from the cradle to the grave, and of course, from the cradle means after the birth, playing the Quran, keeping the child in an environment which is good, which is healthy, where they're going to learn something about their deen, is good. So he said that, again, this 75 years. He says, how do most people, they spend that years? He says, in fact, or at least he's saying that, what happened and how did it get to this point? He said that, again, this is, just kind of a, as they say, verbal method, kind of just a point. He says that in actuality, he says, if you look at a person's lifespan, he says, actually, 30 years of life is enough for them. It's really enough. That if truly we benefited from our life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, he says, 30 years is enough. And we can gain so much. Again, some of our Imam alayhim afdal, what was their lifespan? 25 years. After 25 years, they were shaheed. But look at their capacity. And while, yes, we can't gain their capacity to go farther, but it is an example for us. Again, even some of their students as well. One of our great ulama, or one of our great scholars, Allama Hindi, for example. Age of 13, he was a mujtahid. Age of 13, he was a mujtahid. He wasn't even baligh. So this scholar, he says that truly if we actually used our life correctly, 30 years was enough for us. He says, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he offered to humanity. He says, well, take 30 years, and that's good, and return back to me. In those 30 years, gain the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has delivered. But he says, mankind was like, what? Only 30 years? That's all I have? He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave 30 years to other creatures as well. 30 years to the donkey. But the donkey was like, what? For 30 years I have to take everything for humanity? They have to put all their loads on me? So the donkey was like, Allah, just give me 15 years. So Allah granted 15 years for the donkey. Again, animals, they die faster than us. And so what happened? It says, mankind says, oh yeah, give me those 15 years. So now the lifespan is 45 years. And what do we do in those 45 years? Then the dog was also given 30 years. And he says, yeah, Allah, he says, for 30 years I have to protect mankind. I have to run after their, if they send me out to hunt, I have to run after their prey. He says, no, just give me 15 years. That's it. Average lifespan of a dog is 15 years. What happened? Man said, oh, okay, I'll take those 15 years. So now we have 60 years. What do we do with those 60 years? What do we do? He says, and then the crow. The crow was also given 30 years. The crow was like, well, flying around here and there and making those noises. All I need is 15 years. Mankind took those 15 years too. So the average lifespan is what? 75 years. Then he says that, and if we are really not benefiting from this life, he says, what's happening? He says, for a part of our life, we're working like a donkey. Another part of our life, we're working like a dog. To gain what? To gain the dunya. Then a part of our life, like the crow, when the crow is about to die, he gets real old. What does he do? It digs like a spot, like a hole. And then what do? Dig a hole and we go into that spot. As if we're not using this life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. To what? To gain closeness to Him, to gain this knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent through us through His revelation and through His Prophet, through the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we see that all of the ma'asumeen, they ordered us, what? Go seek knowledge. The Prophet said from the cradle to the grave, or even if you have to go to China, Imam Ali alayhi hafizahullah, he says, if you look at mankind, that you can divide them into some categories. What is the categories? That either they're alimun rabbani, either yes, they gain that knowledge, and that knowledge has benefited them to the point that they are, again, alimun rabbani. They're spiritual, they're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they are students, muta'allim, they're students on the path of salvation. And if you're not these two, what he said, they blow in the wind from here, there. No objective. No true objective in life. Nor do they gain from all which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent. And this is why also Imam Sadiq alayhi hafizahullah, when it comes to knowledge, he says that if he saw anyone who said that they are his Shia, he says, especially if they're shab and they're not learning, if they're youth and they're not learning, he says, I would reprimand them. He says that if it wouldn't look bad, I would reprimand them. And reprimand them severely. He says, but what I do, I can just simply encourage them. Because I don't want them to miss that treasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in store for them. So like Imam Jawad alayhi hafizahullah, or Imam Jawad, like the other ma'sumeen, encouraged this idea of learning. So he says, seek knowledge, it is obligatory upon you. And then he adds something to that. He says that while seeking knowledge is obligatory, alaykum bi talab al-ilm fa inna talabahu farida. Then he says, wal bahtha anhu nafila. Subhanallah. He says, okay, if you go and you seek knowledge, don't just suffice with the seeking of knowledge. Sit among yourselves and discuss that knowledge. Al-Bahth. In the Hausa, we have this thing, it's called al-Mubahitha. What do? You go to class, and then after class, sometimes it is the same day, sometimes it's the next day, right before class starts. What do the students do? They sit down, they discuss that knowledge. They do al-Mubahitha. And when they discuss that knowledge, what happens? Not only do they solidify their understanding of that knowledge, but they expound upon that knowledge. They expound upon it. They begin to understand more deeply that knowledge. So and this is kind of interesting in a related way, someone shared a video with me. It's on YouTube, inshallah, you can see this video. It's very interesting. One scientist, I think he studied in Oxford or Cambridge, or one of the two. I can't remember. I'll have to go back to see where he studied it. But one of those universities, top universities, and again, he was a scientist, evolutionary scientist. So he said that, he says, Darwin discovered something. He discovered something, but unfortunately, his understanding of it was wrong, was incorrect. He says, and so he started studying, and he says, and a lot of the scientists who went after Darwin in that evolution, trying to discover what? The beginning of life, the source of life. And so, whether that source of life came from what? A single cell organism. That's what they were trying to discover. That where did this life come from? He says, yes, the question was good. He says the effort was put there, but the understanding was incomplete. He says, so all those who went after and taking the same question, and really, what is that source? He says, what was discovered was something, he says, it was mind-blowing. And not only was it mind-blowing, but they said that this is truly evidence of an intelligent designer. It's impossible that life came from nothing. Or life came from some sort of physical object. or these gases or things. It's impossible. And what is that? And this is one of the things that this recent scholar says. He says it's the DNA code. He says, and once they found the code, the DNA, and they discovered it, and they began to actually examine it. He says they came to this conclusion. He said, look, this is the way the patterns are. He says that he says the DNA is actually they said it's a code, it's a program. They ran it, it says it's actually a program. How the DNA works, it's a program. He says, and then, and there he gives reference to, I guess, who's the Microsoft guy? Bill Gates, yeah. He goes to Bill Gates. He was like, because he made a comment also about that when they kind of was looking and discovering that, oh, this is a code. It is a very fine-tuned code. He says, Bill Gates said that, he says, this program is actually more complex. He says, it looks like a computer program, coded, but it's more complex than anything that we can do. More complex than anything we can do. He says, but clearly it's a code. Clearly it's a code. And so he says that, well, who codes? You have to have intellect in order to code. But apparently, our intellect doesn't reach the level of that coding. And it's impossible. So even now, some people, oh yeah, we've created and discovered what? Artificial intelligence. But that artificial intelligence is not like the intelligence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. So for not one single moment, and of course some people are getting, oh, well, it's artificial intelligence, it's going to be faster, superior. No. Yeah, maybe faster than what some people think, but not all of humanity. Of course, for sure, definitely not the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wasalam. Their capacity, their intelligence are far beyond. And then even those who are not ma'soom like the Ahlul Bayt. Let's take Zainab al-Kubra, salamu alayhi. Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Again, AI is nothing. Many of our ulama, Ayatul Bahjat, Muhammad Tabatabai, these urafat, these individuals who have connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to that original source of knowledge. And that's what the prophets came. Uballighukum risalati Rabbi. I came to deliver the most deepest form of knowledge, and knowledge that will connect you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is why the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu says it is obligatory for you to gain that knowledge. And not just simply read the knowledge or take the knowledge in, discuss that knowledge to understand, to discover the depth of that knowledge. And then Imam Jawad alayhi hafizahullah, inshallah we'll go through these quickly in order not to take too much time. He gives 5 benefits of interacting with knowledge in this way. That you take seriously the endeavor to learn and also the endeavor to discuss that knowledge in order to deepen your understanding and increase your knowledge of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent through His revelation and through His Prophet and the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, what is the benefit of that? He says, وَهُوَ السِّلَةُ بَيْنَ الْإِخْوَانِ. He says, you'll deepen your relationship with one another as a community, as brothers, as sisters, as a family. وَدَلِيلٌ عَلَى الْمَرُوَّةِ. That this knowledge that you go and you seek and you discuss, it in itself is an indication of your humanity. Al-Maruwa, one of those words is kind of difficult to translate, come in the meaning of chivalry, but also means humanity as well. Al-Insaniyya. That what is seeking that knowledge and discussing it and expanding upon that knowledge, that's a sign of your humanity. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He distinguished humanity, this creation, from other creation through what? Through ilm. وَعَلَّمَ الْآدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Imam Jawad, he says that knowledge is what? He says, تُحْفَةٌ فِي الْمَجَالِسِ. So knowledge is that treasure which is existing in your majalis, in your gatherings. that if that gathering is going to be one of benefit and fruit, then what has to be there? Knowledge. Just something, share something. An understanding of the Quran, hadith of Rasulullah, understanding of something that is a part of our deen. وَصَاحِبٌ فِي السَّفَرِ. And what is knowledge? It is a companion in travel. And of course, in this life is a journey. إِنَّكَ كَارِهٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. That you're journeying and traveling through this world, through this life. And at the end of that journey, you'll meet Allah. But you will meet Him with what? Is it just the efforts of toiling for this world? Or will you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that, Ya Allah, I've understood some of that knowledge which you've given me. Complete the rest of it for me. This knowledge is what? Unsun fil ghurba. Unsun fil ghurba. That if there's no one with you, then if you have knowledge, then this will be your companion. This will keep you, I would say, not occupied. It will give you comfort. This is why also Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam made a very beautiful statement. He said that if I was the only person left in the world, everyone died. He says, if I was the only person, he says, as long as I have the Quran, he says, I would not feel lonely. He says, I wouldn't feel al-wahsha. I wouldn't feel that I'm alone. Why? Because I have the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're praying that in this night of dua and tawassul, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bihaqq Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, that He gives us knowledge, He increases our knowledge, He increases our understanding, and through our increase of knowledge and understanding, He connects us with Him, and He solidifies our connection to His deen, to His revelation, and to the sirat of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. اللهم كل وليك لحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائي في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
شغل زيارة فوق